joining us today. We're doing a session with Arri. We have people from kind of all different sections, the cameras, the training classes, the hardware, and the service department. So we have like a bunch of people that can field questions for us, and they also want to hear from you guys as well. But due to the nature of product developments and what's going on right now in the world, some things they obviously can't talk about, some schedules are pushed massively down the road. So some questions you ask might not be able to, they might not be able to comment on. So just understand that. I'm going to hand it over to Phil, who's the co-host. He's going to explain the people from Arri and what they do so that you guys can know better who to address your questions to. And Phil, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. So for those who don't know me, well, I'm Phil. I sometimes am a DIT still, and for most of the time I'm now spending with Arri as a business development manager, taking care of North Africa, Middle East, and India. So all the fun countries and none of the places that consider you, but since I have this good connection with all of you, I think I'm super happy here to talk to you guys. And I want to introduce to you some of the people that are joining us in this meeting. First of all, Christine. Christine is a product manager for ECS, Electronic Control Systems. Then we have Hendrik Voss, who is also the OG product manager for ECS, Electronic Control Systems. Also on board is Florian Rettich, who is our senior trainer at Arri Academy and also a digital workflow consultant for us at Arri. And of course, last but not least, we have Michael Jonas here, who was the product manager behind the Alexa Mini and was also involved in designing the MiniLF. And what we want to talk about to you guys here is not so much new products, because we ourselves, we don't know what's coming up or when. What we want to talk to you about is our existing products. If you have comments, if you have remarks, if there's anything you wish to be different and all kinds of stuff. So we will ignore questions about future products, but we're more than happy to, I think we have prepared some questions for you. Shall we start with Hendrik or Christine?
Yeah, Hendrik.
Yeah, I can start. Basically, the questions. Maybe we can come a little bit later, but we have a small warm up. We always try to improve our products and find out what you guys need. So this is something we would like to hear from you. Actually, all of you might have been working with our tools. Christine and I, we are responsible for the electronic control system. That is WCU4, SXU1, the lens motors, and all this kind of stuff. We had some feedback that there's room to improve the wireless range. So we thought, what can we do to do this, to get a better, more reliable radio connection? And now at this NAB, which unfortunately is not taking place, we actually wanted to introduce a new product. And since we cannot do this there now, we had a small sneak peek already at the BSC show, I thought we can show this here, show you some information about it. Well, I'm really getting distracted by Luke Taylor. What's going on there? I maybe just start showing you some slides.
Yeah.
We have a new product called external radio module. It's called the ERM. Maybe you have heard about this kind of product already from the CSS product range. That's the camera stabilizing systems. They already had a range extender, and we now made a version that's compatible with our lens control systems, lens and camera control system. So let me just share a screen with you. 1 second. I hope I'm sharing the right one.
Yeah, when you share, you can pick exactly the window you want.
Yeah. All right. 1 second. Make it a bit more exciting. Oh, wait, one more try. All right, now you might see a screen here. Do you see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So on this picture there, you see a car rig, you know, with car shots, there are challenges, as you know, with wireless range and connectivity. But I think this example is one example, but it might really also fit in the DIT world. If you, for example, use a 61 a bit far away from the camera for controlling the iris. So basically, so here you see the device. It's called the ERM 2400 LCS. It's a radio module ERM 2400 LCS. LCS is our abbreviation for lens control system. So you see these two boxes on the lower right, and those is a pair of ERM modules. Those ERM modules can connect to a hand unit and on the one end, and to a camera or motor controller on the other hand. And we are using a 2.4 gigahertz radio module in there, frequency hopping module that is quite powerful. We're using 100 milliwatts there, and we measured ranges of like 1 kilometer. It always, as you know, depends on the environment, but we think it's a cool, good radio module. Somehow I avoid to say great because it sounds like somebody on the news always who finds everything great. But, so this radio module in there is quite big. That's why we cannot fit it into our existing equipments. But we have it now in this external box, and then use it like that.
What's the size of it? Do you have anything to compare it to?
Not really here, but it's maybe like, I would say, maybe 2 cigarette boxes or a little bit bigger. It's not really the smallest, but in some situations, I mean, you have to fit it somehow on the camera. That's on the one end, but on the other hand, I would say you have to put it on a tripod or on your C-stand together with a monitor or something like that. Yeah, so we are using this. We are going to sell those very soon. I think they're just being built, so within the next couple of weeks, and they are always delivered as a pair of 2 modules. Those are pre-paired, so you don't have to select a channel or anything. They just know each other automatically. And one important thing to understand with it is that what it basically does is that it is transmitting a cabled connection, more or less a CAN bus connection over the air. So you can connect it to, as you know, you can connect a handset and a camera with a wire, with a cable. And exactly this protocol is being packaged from the radio module and then transmitted over the air. That's important to understand, because if you understand this kind of idea, then you will also understand what's possible to do with it and what's not possible to do with it. So as it's like a wireless cable connection, very reliable in my view, and I hope you can try it soon as well and confirm that. You can connect one handset to one camera. You cannot connect two handsets to one radio module on the camera in that case, but probably that is not even really always necessary. Because if you think of a set where the AC would be probably quite close to the camera, he could connect to the camera radio module directly, and then the DIT, for example, can use this and for connecting to the iris. There are coming a couple of adapter cables with it. There's a special connector on the unit. It is called FS-CAN connector. FS is abbreviation for FOMA Systems. FOMA Systems is a partnering company that produces tools for us. And they have built this module. That's why it's labeled like that as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me anytime. Right? There are already some productions that have been made with it very successfully, actually. Fast and Furious 9 have used prototypes of this module and Ford versus Ferrari as well. And as you know, they are really long-range car scenes, and the modules were used for this, and really were used very successfully.
I just so everyone knows, I uploaded a picture of it in the chat. It was I used it when we put it on the we had to rush and we put it on the back of a microlight. So that's a microlight in the back for size comparison. Do you want me to share it real quick just so people can see what it looks like, Hendrik?
Sure.
Hold on a second. And I was going to say that in my experience, it worked way farther than 1,000 meters. It was.
Yeah, you know, that's with range, it's always, you know, and we at Arri, we are usually quite conservative when we boast with numbers, or at least say things that usually we can really fulfill. So yeah, it can do also longer, I agree.
Yeah, is it possible to swap out the antenna on that for something bigger and stronger?
Of course,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
As long as it's 2.4 gigahertz dipole antenna, you can do anything. We actually we sell like this because it's a standard antenna we ship with, and the unit is certified with this antenna.
Because we noticed we lost picture before we lost the connection to the handset, which is pretty great.
Yeah. All right. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Okie dokie. Here are some examples, so you can use it on basically all our cameras and also third-party cameras. In this case, one module is connected to the LCS socket on the Alexa Plus, or in this case, yeah, SXT. And the other one could be connected to WCO4 to SXU1. Or here, for example, you can connect this one module to the XT connector of the camera and the other one again to a handset. Or you can connect it to the L-bus as well. And of course, you can, like this, you can control the motors, but you can also control the camera settings. And I just mentioned it's a point-to-point connection, but of course, you can control 3 axes, not only 1 axis. And since it can support all our CAN-based protocols like the LCS protocol or the EXT protocol on the EXT socket or the L-bus protocol, you can, for example, also take a master grip or OCU1 and then connect this to the handset.
But there's a note, because if you use it with OCU1, the people expect that there's the override function over there. But you have to know that in that case, it's like hardwired option. So that means in the hardwired version that the override function doesn't work.
Yeah.
Just to mention that, that's important.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and then of course you can also use it on third-party cameras with our external motor controllers. In this case, the CForce Mini RF. Maybe you can spot it there in the center of the image. Or with the UMC4. Or with the AMC1. So basically you can use it with all our tools. And last but not least, you can also use it with a stabilized remote head. If you like to, for example, separate the wheels or the encoder head from the brain of the from the control panel of the stabilized remote head. And unfortunately, I don't have a slide for this. You can also use this with C-Motion equipment. So the C-Motion C Pro hand unit, for example, you can connect this as well to this ERM module. So it's really quite a versatile, cool box. Very powerful.
Hey, Henrik, there's a question about how you would connect both a WCU and an SXU at the same time.
Well, that's what I just said. It's a point-to-point connection. So if you have two handsets, you can either use two radio systems in parallel, or you can, if you don't really need the range with both handsets, you can connect one handset to the internal Arri radio module in the camera, for example, for focus, and then the second, the iris control, for example, could go through a ERM. But what's not possible with this is a network mode. This one you really have to see as a very long range, very robust and reliable radio connection, and then with an external box, but it only does point to point. But if you have a situation when you feel that all the other radio systems are somehow suffering from interference or from range issues, then this might be the solution that might save your ass.
It's important to say that when you have the ERM on the camera and connected to the ERM on the SXU, for example, and then you have WC4 connected to the AMI400 wireless wide radio, and if they are too close to each other, then be aware of it that if the AMI400 and the ARM are too close, then the distance can be reduced.
Which, as you know, is
common, like that's the physics behind it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Is there anything else you guys want to show, or do you want to open it up for questions on both sides?
Wait, did you see? Wait, did you see the last? I think I didn't show. I think I forgot one slide. Let me.
I think no. Henrik?
But Christine, didn't you have? Oh no, it's on. Oh yeah. Okay, let me just share this one slide again.
This slide is in the. I think on the fourth.
Yeah. Because you were asking what the size is, maybe that can give you an indication here also. Well, maybe not. I think that's a 13-inch monitor next to it, and the Noga arm. It's mounted to a Noga arm. Yeah. And basically we tested this really a lot of times, and we went to the most crazy radio environments that you could imagine. For example, we took it on a show, on a trade show, where usually if you want to set up a Wi-Fi network or something, 2.4 gigahertz, it's really a mess, and we things it's really hard to set up a 2.4 gigahertz network on a trade show like a NAB. And we tried it there, and it's quite good. It's a frequency hopper, and good output power. So yeah, I hope you can get it in your hands and make yourself an image, a picture soon, like Jamie.
We have a question from Chris Bolton.
Hi, sorry, I think I missed it. What frequency does it transmit on?
2.4 gigahertz.
And does it need to be a certain distance from other wireless emitting devices?
Well, we have used it on cameras. It's always good to not directly attach it to you like stack wireless devices next to each other. Yeah, since it has a 100 milliwatt, it works quite well. That's what Christina just tried to say, that you always have to get the furthest distance as possible. But if you are on a camera, obviously you are limited in the range you can be away from other systems. But we had it on a camera with a wireless video. Of course, a wireless video is in the 5 gigahertz band, a different frequency, but still there are some spurious emissions, and yeah, try just to keep it as far as possible. But I cannot give a recommendation how many centimeters or meters. I cannot give a very detailed recommendation on that. But in general, like a general rule of thumb, it's always important to try to get radio modules as far as possible apart from each other.
What's the price?
Oh, the price is, you see, I'm not a salesman, but it's 4,000, it's roughly 4,000 euros a pair. So this is 2 radio modules with a set of cables is around 4,000 euros.
3,890.
389.
3,890.
Just got cheaper.
It was supposed to be, I don't know, can you, Hendrik, do you have the latest news about availability?
It's being built now. It should be really available as of, maybe next week or something. It shouldn't really not take long to become available, if not already available. I mean, I'm not really 100% up to date because of those crazy times, but it should really be available now.
Yeah, the first 20 are finished built, so depends on the ordering of the people and the shipping possibilities of Corona.
Sure.
Can we take a question from Chase Abrams? Chase, you're up.
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute myself. How many ERM sets would you recommend using together on one film set before things started to get a little hairy with the long-range wireless?
Good question. We have used, I think, up to 3 on one set. If you want me to make a recommendation, I would say 2 should be quite safe. And again, the further the 2 systems are away from each other, the better.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I ask is because I could totally see this being used as like, oh, we need, long range remote head and iris, and then we need that for 2 cameras. So, and people just throw this on film sets sometimes. So, I just want to be as well versed as possible.
Yeah, we had this on film sets, like 2 cameras or even 3 cameras in parallel. Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe I'll prepare a bit more detailed answer to that after.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Some details to make a note. Yeah.
Hey, Hendrik,
No,
I think one thing some people are asking about, like, if we would use this, this box all the time, but I think it's more of like a specialty box when you're doing like a remote head or arm car or like follow van kind of situation, right? Like, you're not going to use this every day on set, are you?
Well, of course you could use it many times, but you have seen the size of the box. So we really think that as people try to work lightweight and compact, our standard radio modules are still there. But if you get into challenges, which you really need to an extended range, then that is a module we think can be the right solution for that. And that might be like car sequences, or if you're really far away with your DIT station, for example.
Hendrik,
yeah,
can you hear me? Maybe there's a comment to that, like this kind of module is like a big American truck, right? Kind of, and it will actually push everything out of the way by sheer power. So I believe kind of there is a downside to it, right? So it uses the full 2.4 gigahertz like spectrum through kind of frequency hopping. And of course, kind of it will interfere with other systems actually that use dedicated channels in these areas. So handle with care, right? This is kind of, I think it's kind of the, I'm not sure it's like the always, like if you're alone, it's fine. But if you are collaborative and there's more like other radio systems, you may get issues with these other systems actually as well, right? Is that correct?
It's absolutely correct. It always depends on how congested your space is frequency wise, and since it's hopping all over the band, it can disturb others or also be disturbed by others. But yeah, it has an output power which is on the upper limit for the worldwide ISM band standards with 100 milliwatts. But before you get scared that now this is really a radiation bomb, we also made SAR tests, which is a specific absorption rate for the human body, and we are within specifications there. Otherwise, we wouldn't sell it either.
Great. Chris Bolton has a question.
Yeah, so you're saying it's non-ionizing. So question on the parallel use of it again. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So if you had, per se, 4 Arris handsets and you connected to the antenna in parallel, would this transmit all 3 handsets? Is that the idea?
Say again, sorry.
So if you have 3 Arris handsets, will this one transmitter booster module transmit all 3 of those handsets? Is that how that's working?
No, you need each for each one. Okay. But then you have the issue of like they are too close to each other then. So
that's why I made this example in the very beginning. When I started the presentation, I said, imagine you have your camera and you have your handset and you can hardwire them. And hardwire is always a very, of course, no interference with hardwiring. So what we do with those modules, we take the signal, the protocol that goes over that hardwire line from the socket to socket. We connect this to the 2 ERMs, and then it's like a hardwire but wireless. You know, it's a wireless cable, so to say.
Yeah, no, I understood that.
That's why it's only point.
So that's why I was asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And again, the question, how many systems can you use in parallel is really not easy to answer for me, because you have 2 frequency hoppers in parallel, for example, or 3, and they hop in a certain pattern, and they can disturb each other. They will also, that might also be other frequencies available, and the systems might be closer or further away from each other. So all those parameters play a role in it. But we made tests with 2 parallel systems, and we recognized that the range got less, but I would say it's still quite good.
Are there frequency scanning options in the unit, or the unit just handles all that itself?
No frequency option scanning option, no.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
There's one thing I'm not really sure, but I can also look that up. I think it has a listen before talk mechanism. So it might be really that it listens what's available and then jumps only where's free. But I wouldn't put my hand into a fire for that. But I can check that out and then later confirm it. If you guys are interested, maybe we can show our contact details in the end, and then we can catch up later for the open questions.
Sure. Ben Hopkins, go ahead.
Hey, hello. You know, I'm apologize. I was driving and couldn't hear everything great. So maybe this was covered, but I'm curious about, are you pretty much from camera control of all the other settings in the menu? Is it really just what the handset would be capable of, or can you get full access through that as well?
No, it's just what the handset is capable of, because again, it's just supporting the protocol that the handset supports on the wire to the camera. And Christina mentioned before that, for example, the override function with the OCU1 is not possible. I'm not sure if you guys all know what the override function means, but the override function means that with the OCU1 is a small control unit, it's abbreviation actually for the operator control unit that would touch on the camera and be like a digital follow focus. And with this unit, you can take away the control from the handset and control a motor. Of course, it's most useful for the operator. That's why this product is called operator control unit. And then you can give control back to the handset. And the reason why we did this is that many times during setup, if the operator wants to frame a shot or wants to set up the image, then it's quite useful for him or her to be able to control the lens, him or herself. And if a lens motor is on the lens and the AC is busy with something else, then it can happen that the lens motor has to be removed, detached from the lens, and then to be able to control, to change the lens setting, and then afterwards, of course, you have to reattach it to the lens and you have to calibrate it, and that takes time and nerves. And for this reason, we made the operator control unit, so you can take control away from the handset. And this is not possible. That's one of the very few features that's not possible through this ERM. But really, we made this. I mean, it's a box that is a separate radio box, and it has some, it's sometimes really a compromise to put a separate box on a camera and put a separate box near your handset. And we wouldn't have done that if we were not really convinced and be sure that that can really bring an improvement in range. So of course, it's always more convenient to use the integrated radio system, but sometimes there are limits. And for this reason, we said, hey, we really have a powerful radio module here. Let's offer this as an option if this is the only way to get the job done.
Sure. Henrik, did you guys have questions for the group?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have many questions. It's always hard to have, I don't know how many people we are here now, but like 33 people. In general, as you are the DITs, we are really interested what tools would you really like to have. I mean, you now have here the team more or less, or that can bring your dreams to life, if you can say like this, sorry, no. But if you, for example, I wonder many times, like a single axis lens control hand unit, and Christina wonders many times as well. Is that really the solution you want to have on your DIT card for controlling iris, or let's call it exposure in camera settings? Or do you want more? Or do you want it differently? And what do you really wish to have? We would really like to just get a quick feedback from you if you think we are missing something in our product range, because we would be really happy to offer you the tools you need to get your job done comfortably.
All right, just to speak to that real quick, guys, when we're doing this, everyone from the in the participants button, open that, and then you can raise your hand. Just do that. We already have a few people queued up, so we can keep this kind of orderly. And this is specifically for the Arri ECS system, so electronic control system.
And of course, also specifically for Arri cameras, right? I mean,
right.
the philosophy of course, since we are a camera manufacturer and we have tools around the camera, it's always interesting to see what we can do to combine things to make them more streamlined.
Sure. Chris Bolton, you're up first.
Yeah, I think for the most part, Arri's on track of adding sort of features that make our job easier. But just continuing to improve on wireless infrastructure. We use a lot of wireless mesh networks on set to communicate with cameras, and just sort of improving reliability and communication with that without needing to add external boxes to cameras. I think for me, anyways, that's a huge thing. And I like the option you have for that sort of long range extension unit for wireless focus or iris controls. But frankly, unless there's a reasonable way to add 3-4 units to get good range. So for an example, if you could add iris control somehow into a mesh type network, that would be really great. I mean, that's a wish list thing, but those are my comments.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Andy Lemon, you're up. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
There you go. Hi, guys. I've been working with the WCU4s on 2 seasons of a show, and they're great units. They work really well with the Alexa Minis. There's no onboard Michigas. The one thing I'm interested in from a DIT standpoint is a little more streamlined iris control. Instead of having the big single channel hand units that kind of stack and you have to figure out how to get them on the cart, is there a possibility to do like a single channel slider where if you have 4 cameras, you can stack a set of sliders or some kind of different ergonomics for single channel units?
Well, thank you. I mean, Christina, maybe you want to say.
That's a good question, because I had a question like to you guys the same, wondering if you're like wishing for like a hand unit which is like small, like then you have your like the iPhones, and then you can stack one next to each other. But the question is, how often do you want to use it? Also, like going around, walking around with like with the SXU or with the WC4, and you just like use it as a hand unit. So my question to you is, do you can you say like 80% of the time you have it on your DID desk, and the 20% of the time you're working on the set? Is this somehow?
Well, I know for Iris, which is what DITs generally, we have that set up back that live on the cart. I don't walk around on a set with an Iris, and if we do need that functionality, I'll hand that off to the camera assistant so they can take control of the Iris, and then they'll do that on set. Otherwise, a specific iris control lives, it sits on the cart all the time. So a smaller unit and, possibly something with functionality of, being able to change the frame rates and that type of stuff would be helpful, although not 100% necessary because the camera assistants handle that most of the time. So
beside the frame rate, you also want to change the white balance, ISO, or this as well?
In a perfect world, yeah. In a perfect world, there'd be a single channel, something that you could stack up 3 or 4 of them next to each other, would take up a minimum amount of space, have a small screen on it, and then allow you to change parameters like ASA, color temperature, things like that. So if the camera assistants are tied up, busy putting a camera on a crane or have their hands full of something else, it's something that we from the DIT cart can control for them.
What about camera control stuff? Because you have it also on the WC4. Is this something you wish like a software feature for the single axis unit?
In a perfect world, yes. But right now, I know that like the single channel hand units don't have all that additional control. So just, I guess a good start would be like the single channels in a form factor with possibly just like the slider, because the slider is a very easy thing to kind of nail as far as iris goes.
It doesn't take much space on the card, right?
No,
Exactly. Exactly, and you could make a, it's something you can make stackable, and it's something, if they had a power throughput, you could power one of them, and it would power the whole set of them if you stacked them, something like that. That's
the point. Do you agree to this? Because it's a very good point. I think I've heard a different opinion from somebody who said the knob is more precise and you have to be able to run away with it if you need to. But maybe that's it's a more special case, right?
Well, I guess that's a question for the rest of the group. Is how they use it. Mine live on the cart. And then the if we need to run around with it, generally the camera system will take that control. But how do the rest of you guys use those? How do the rest of you use single channel units to control iris on the set?
Yeah, my earlier comment to them, Andy, was like 80-20. There's a lot of times where I have to take the iris handset off to do a particular shot and just get closer to set. Or especially if we're like on a process trailer, like iris handsets come off, I have clamps for them, etc. So it's nice to have options. I think more options in like the SXU world would be great.
There was one somebody on the chat like saying he's wishing for calibrated iris rings. So I'm wondering, so as you know from the WC4, you are used to the pre-marked focus ring. So I'm wondering if there's something which you will wish for the single axis unit to have like pre-marked iris rings as well.
I'll comment on that. I think it would be some value to, for example, when you're setting up your camera, kind of like with focus pullers, they have, different types of rings. Like I'm going to use Preston example. They have an E or F ring or whatever that sort of mirrors the focus calibration. If you could do something like that with an iris ring, where you have one iris ring that shows a beginning stop to an end stop, it may not cover all lenses, but at least you could map all your lenses to be the same scale on your handset as it is, and that translates to a particular lens. Something like that would be really useful.
But would that be one ring, or would that be several rings, like one starting at T1, one start at 2.8, one start at 2, one?
The way I kind of look at it is you'd have one custom ring that you would just choose a lens, you would pre-market for that one lens. So you have, so for example, if you're using a set of lenses and all your lenses are 1.3 to T22 to T22 or something like that. So for all your prime lenses, you'd have one ring, and each lens would be calibrated to that. I know if you use the modern set of lenses, they quite often are very, very close, but they're not always perfect. So it'd be nice to be able to sort of preset the each camera lens. So if you have a 35 mil up, you just say it's a 35 mil, and then your iris ring will be exact to that specific lens.
Yeah.
We have a question from Timur. Timur, you're up.
Hi. In terms of camera control, I was gonna ask about CAP protocol, because I use that a lot. I usually don't get VCU units. I get the SXU units, so I don't have the camera control, and I usually have an iPad right next to it where I control everything in Cine Control. And it would be nice to have ability to change codecs, change resolution, and change base frames per second with CAP. And on the topic of changing base frames per second, I had a project recently where we were simulating the security camera footage, and we wanted to go below 24 or 23.98 base frames per second, going into like super slow motion into like 3 frames per second. So it's like movement is really choppy, and I didn't find a way to do that. And I'm wondering if that's a feature that can be added.
But maybe Michael Jonas question?
Yes, there is a way right now, actually. And I talked to Timo about it, like, or the scenic control guys. Kind of, it's a little tricky, but if you can prepare, you can do it. So I don't know whether you guys have ever played with actually writing or kind of storing user setups on Alexa Minis. And this is only a mirror and the Alexa Mini and Alexa MiniLF if they have left it on. I don't know exactly, but I think you can actually write partial user setups. So when you kind of store user setup, then you can actually, there's multiple groups and you can select the groups actually that should be included in the user setup. It's a little nifty. It's kind of complicated because you're not able to directly affect the value right now, but then I'm pretty sure that Scenic Control can actually load user setups. And if you prepare the right user setups, you can actually change things like resolution, and you can change things like base FPS and stuff like that. You just need to prepare before the shoot. Kind of, we're like working on actually extending cap, but given the current times, I'm not sure when stuff actually will show up. So yeah, so far.
Yeah, copy you. It's just, it was on a mini shoot, and it's always switching between RAW and shooting 50 frames per second. So I have to switch between ProRes and RAW all the time, and base FPS sometimes too. But
yeah, but that actually, if I think Scenic Control, I talked to the guys and kind of, because they asked me about it, and I told them, well, there's this like user setup thing that you can do, and that's a hack, right? In a way, because we built it for the little transvideo monitor because kind of communication was limited there as well. And you using the transvideo monitor, like the Starlight, you can actually change user setups. So we actually created that feature to actually create partial user setups that would only change not everything, but like only the settings that are kind of contained in the user setup when you save it. And you have to determine this when you save the setup. And you can just include the recording parameters. And this way you can actually switch between Arri RAW and ProRes easily.
This is something you can also put on a user button, correct me if I'm wrong, and then you can select the user button on your remote, on your WCS or through your web interface and select that.
No, you can actually, you can enable the on-screen control using a user button, and then you can actually, in the monitoring, you can actually get that menu where you switch it. Like if you would use a transvideo monitor, but you cannot directly load a user setup using a user button right now. But like using Scenic Control, you can, I think you can use, you can load user setups, and if you have a partial one, you can like just switch the Arri RAW versus ProRes part of the entire settings.
copy you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to speak to that real quick, I think what we're looking for is some kind of iris or lens control, along with an elegant way to control the camera, whether that's an iPhone or something that Arri makes. Camera control is just super important every job.
Yeah, can I actually ask a question to Mr. Bolton, because he was like referring to mesh networks, and I was kind of wondering what kind of networks these are that you're using.
Go ahead, Chris.
It basically, in a nutshell, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mesh network, but basically it's an infrastructure of wireless access points that generally operate in 2.4 or 5 gigahertz realms. That's sort of part of a general computer network. So
So it's Wi-Fi IP based.
Essentially, it's Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, actually, if you have that, then a lot is possible. Actually, if you can see, that's a big question. Kind of how much can you do with Wi-Fi, and if you guys have like ways to get it work, and because kind of I've seen like people struggling with it, and I think if you can get an IP connection to work, then there's ways to do stuff. We are just not sure how much of it actually exists out there right now, right? So we like looking at 5G and things, and we're wondering how much of a fully covered Wi-Fi network is there when you actually do stuff. Does this generally work?
Yeah, I think might be useful is I mean we're drafting sort of a network training class for our DIT-WITs, and maybe we can draft a document for you, sort of our wish list of what we'd like to, how we'd like the camera to be able to respond to a network in that manner.
How would you, in what sense respond to it? Like,
well, like for one example, some wireless devices have issue navigating to different points. So some things just want to latch to a specific access point, but not skip over to another access point. Sometimes do like MAC addresses or SSIDs, things like that.
Okay, so like switching kind of your switching between different like access points on a network for a camera, for example.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, if you had
cool.
two or more access points on set, the mesh would allow the camera to jump onto a closer or stronger access point if it moved away from the main one, and it would all happen seamlessly. So we're working on a class to help teach people the hardware, the setup, the maintenance, and the practicality of doing this on set and making it as mobile as possible. So because camera control for us is everything. It makes the difference.
Okay.
Michelle Delorme, you're up.
Hey there. Along with camera control, it would be great to have some way to connect, like to be able to drop AMLs in wirelessly or via a cable to wireless control. It would also be great to have an editor for the look that wasn't little up-down buttons, that was more of like a 3D cube style interface for adjusting contrast and saturation. So two separate requests, but both of them look oriented for camera control.
Okay. Does like what Pomfort is providing actually fit the bill? Because for us, it's like always kind of tricky to get in the way of like people we're working with, right? So it's kind of always like a balance. Do we do this ourselves? Are we kind of putting kind of people we work with out of business? Do we need to support other people? Actually, what is your feeling there?
It would be great to jump from like an iPhone based something back to the whatever cart has LiveGrade going on it, and have the flexibility to change, upload an AML without having to be attached to LiveGrade if LiveGrade is on a cart that's further away or on a different system or a different unit or whatever.
Michelle, you can do this with Arri Cap and Pocket Control. It's not elegant, but they're hopefully working on making it more elegant, just so you know.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
I have a question maybe to you guys when we talk about the AML files. Since probably most of you are using Resolve for their other color work, at least next to LiveGrade for painting the camera. You know that Resolve can read all embedded look files, aka AML files from previously recorded footage, but so far there is no direct export. So is this something that you do quite frequently, that you actually cannot, let's say, grade enough within LiveGrade, and you have to create a certain look file in Resolve, and then you have to walk the whole way through exporting the 3D LUT and then make it become an AML and then get it into camera? Is this something that happens quite frequently? Because then I would suggest that it might be a feature request to the Resolve guys to make this, at least it happened to me, you know, that I wanted to do a correction that LiveGrade couldn't let me do, and then I had to go the whole way and export and import and transmit. You know what I'm talking about? Is it something you're actually facing? Maybe Michelle, that's your point, right?
It's not elegant, yeah, if you have to change the basic 3D look. You can, if you're using CAP in LiveGrade, you can actually edit the look live and then upload it right back to the camera though. But
sure, but let's say
if you're using CAP.
Camera access protocol in LiveGrade.
Yes, the LiveGrade talks to the camera through CAP, and that's basically painting on camera if you want to call it like this. But let's say you have a very sophisticated show LUT, which is a 3D LUT. That's your show LUT, and you're doing the CDL stuff in LiveGrade, and now there's a unexpected thing coming up where you have to completely change your show LUT, and then you probably are limited in the tool set that LiveGrade gives you to change the show LUT underneath, and then you have to kind of walk through let's say Resolve to change it. Then of course you can load that LUT in LiveGrade and then upload it, then job's done. I think this is what Jamie was referring to. But on the other hand, if you don't have the LiveGrade card handy, and I think that was more or less Michelle's point, it's quite painful to get a LUT into an AML and then the AML to the camera. Did I get it right, more or less?
Yes.
So,
and that's one part of it. Like that's the first step, but then also the flexibility to have an AML drop into the camera so it's part of the metadata. Also the flexibility to break away from CAP, or if you're not using CAP.
Correct. Gotcha. So again, if you think that is a useful feature to have Resolve export an AML file, maybe I can put this onto your task list to maybe next Resolve service request or feature request. The more people asking for it, the easier they probably implemented that you can just right click and export as an AML and not just as a cube.
That'd be great.
Because we asked them already, but they of course they listen to what their customers want to have and not necessarily us.
Copy. All right, Luke Taylor, you got a question. Thank you, Florian.
Hey, yeah, so this remote seems awesome. Is there a way to connect that to a computer? Because I feel like at the end of the day, something I've been pining after is that, you know, with Wi-Fi, there's a lot of connectivity issues, especially when it comes to congested areas. And I think the idea of having something that can be used strictly for camera control is like a really cool idea. But then my question is like, is there any way you can open that up to, like, I guess in this analogy, like your cart, right? And then from there develop software to utilize those controls? Like in my mind, what I've always wanted is like essentially to have a MIDI controller for iris control on my cart, right? And what I need is I need to get those control signals into my system, at which point I can sort of focus on controlling that with whatever device I like. And like that open architecture is cool, but I don't want to like, you know, derail the whole conversation. But the idea of being able to kind of jack into a network that's just for camera control is like, and like iris control and that sort of stuff is like really appealing to me. And to do that robustly. The other thing is, you know, then you kind of open up this other problem, right? Like a lot of the time I will take my iris and get like closer to set or something like that. You know, it just happens sometimes, it's unavoidable. At which point, how do you flip from like being like at your cart to like getting close to camera or close to set. You know, it's another consideration. Let me know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. I mean, that's our dream.
Yeah, baby.
Anyway, at the time to.
Can we get something like this, Hendrik?
So
yeah,
4 cameras and buttons and.
I like the design, yeah, very much. No, but of course, I mean, to have an organized set network, that's something that we really would like to have as well. But at the moment, we are in the Wild West, and that is why we took that big gun of a ERM to stay on top of the rest. But I agree with you. It's not possible to connect, to open up that ERM the way it is now.
Maybe Bluetooth.
No, that's a different protocols that are going into the box. So to answer your question, the ERM doesn't do it, but yeah, I mean, Chris is also setting up networks on set to be able to control everything, and I think that's something we want to achieve in future, but we don't have the solution yet.
I'm wondering how often I'm wondering how often it happens that you have like nowadays people who are like wireless set manager. You have some guys on set. Is this happening, or there's nobody like dealing with all the Wi-Fi radios?
That only really happens in like a studio environment. Like if you're like doing, I mean, the only time I've seen it happen is at like the Democratic National Convention, where essentially it's a live show and there's a bunch of, sorry, I'm getting a bunch of text messages. There's a bunch of audio frequencies that are they're trying to make sure they stay separate and everybody's mic is live. And therefore you have kind of somebody going around and wrangling those frequencies. I think it's something that we've talked about for sure, but the idea of being able to get into this world of like this network that you guys have created with this device, and like kind of have like different ways of getting in there, right? Whether I wanted to connect to it with my laptop, whether I want to use WCU for SXU or whatever might be coming, or if I want to do my own weird, like I love the idea of having just like a really simple motorized mixer, so I can see, okay, like I'm at a 2.8 on A camera and like, 4 on B camera. And if somebody takes control, that also reflects it on my end, right? So like a call and response sort of MIDI command.
Mm-hmm.
And right, not to dig the hole too deep, but that's my wish.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the slider control that you were talking about earlier, Christine, I think for shows that are like concerts or live events where the iris isn't changing as much, or you can kind of set it, like that would be awesome, especially if you could do a whole row of them. It'd be like a Sony paint box like array of camera control. But yeah, I think maybe that's kind of crazy for our carts. Maybe there needs to be a much smaller version of that. But I think a lot of us like the knob on the handset, because a lot of times you really have to finesse the iris change as the clouds are moving, or the camera's moving through a scene. So like you really need that that smoothness, the granular control, as opposed to like trying to move a slider.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because that you say that, because at the chat there are some people say, okay, I wish the knob, then there's one part wishing for a slider. But there's also like DPs like sitting sometimes I've seen on set next to the DIT, and then he takes over the iris and doing the iris control. So do you guys think that then the DP, when he takes over, he's like to have the feel of the knob more than a slider?
I mean, maybe, but I think that that's why I would love to have computer access, so I could do like a MIDI control system. So it's something for me and they can have whatever they want,
Mm-hmm.
And that way it takes the development of the actual, we're just asking you to develop the interface, and then we could cater it to whatever we want I mean, I don't know. That makes sense to me. But yeah, I think a lot of DPs like knobs, but who cares?
Do you guys manage frequencies on set sometimes? Do you have a do some of you have a frequency analyzer or something and checking out? Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's becoming a lot more important for our jobs.
So that's a DIT job, right?
It's not anyone's particular job, but it's something that we're just doing. It is nothing official, I'll say that.
Yeah, no, for sure, but yeah.
We do it out of necessity.
Go again, Dave?
So we do it out of necessity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What else would you guys like to ask for the ECS world?
I think, Christine, you might have some questions.
Not much anymore, but one question I've left is regarding the antenna. Yes, because as we already we're middle of discussion of the radio, and that's why we came up with the ARM as well. But I've heard some cases that people told us that they took off the antenna and then they just plug in their other external antenna. So I was wondering how often this happening that you're playing around with the antenna of the SXU. Is this happening on set?
Yeah, for sure.
Each time, or it's so what kind of antennas are you putting there, like sun hands, or what kind of external antennas are?
I'm looking at the link real quick, but if anyone has a picture or wants to comment on it, feel free.
I was just going to say, yeah, directional. Chris Bolton said it in the chat. Directional antenna mods for that. Like I fly. I'll use the SXU when flying on like an Alta on a Movi, and just having that fizz control, even just a single channel, just at a much longer distance, is really helpful with the directional.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's usually in one direction, typically, right, from where you're controlling a camera. So, I mean, to have something sort of cover omnidirectionally doesn't really make a ton of sense all the time. So, directional antenna usually takes care of a lot of the problems.
Well, this is what's legal and what's certified, right? So.
But also being able to get the antenna up and over things. I mean, on a DIT cart, for an example, there's usually nice big monitors and computer systems and electrical systems and whatnot. So you want to be able to get that antenna up nice and high so you can get a solid link.
So actually, with the ARM, then it's now possible just like to have it on the top of your DIT car or bus, and then you can have the cable, coming down, and you have the control. So this can be helpful. Actually, on the set, we had like a testing, like beta testing, of the ARM already on Fast and Furious, and Henry was there actually, and he told me that they had like this ARMs standing somewhere and like putting it high on the top, that it gets the most range out of it. So this could be a solution now with the ARM. It's coming out. I have one last question regarding coming back to the mounting options of a single axis unit. And of course we said like, okay, you're all like wishing for stackable device. But I'm wondering, because now with the SXU you have the wooden handle. Do you all take them off the handle, the wood one, or it stays there? Because I've seen some mounting brackets, people leave like getting in between the wooden handle and then the brain of the SXU.
Yeah, that's what I do, and I have the extra mounting option for a monitor, like a small 5-inch monitor built in.
Okay, so you also have the monitors all the time, like people are used to it, to have it on the WC4. So you miss the mounting options. Is this the way you?
Yeah, my context is more for like an actual assistant that I use it as, not as a DIT, but yeah.
Okay.
How did you do that? You put the monitor in between the handle and the knob?
No, the mounting, the bracket in between the hand and the.
Okay.
Okay, it was a joke, Hendrik. Sorry.
It was. It was not. This time it was not a joke.
Okay.
Thank you.
Henrik, you should be able to see my screen, but this is pretty common for first ACs.
Yeah, I think I've seen this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might actually. I'm gonna see if I have that SXU here.
We have a quick question from Tom Wong. Tom Wong, make sure you unmute yourself.
Tom Wong, why don't you put your picture? I just know you from Facebook, and that profile picture cannot be true.
No, that's definitely me right now.
He's very gorgeous, by the way.
So my question is, maybe is it possible to have a future product that just acts as a wireless repeater, something more simple that can tie into the internal wireless protocols of the cameras, and then we can just set up multiple repeaters as we need to extend our range instead of having to add another box onto the camera?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have thought about that. The thing that you will get, it has of course a big benefit, but also you need more channels. You need more frequencies, and you need more, and you introduce some delay. So our goal is just to make a radio system that works just without the need of any wireless repeater anymore. But it's definitely a good idea. Yeah, we've thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're probably mostly Preston over here in North America, and so just having a hybrid workflow, an option of a hybrid workflow, so we don't have to fight with the camera assistants, because honestly, they all own their Prestons and they're not gonna let that go. It's a rental for them, so there's no convincing them there. But if we can find a seamless way to increase the range of just iris control for us, without having to add another box to the camera, without having to interfere with how the camera assistants work, and we can seamlessly make an integration with that, we can probably get more use out of the SXUs or even the WCUs on all our jobs.
Yeah, I think Simotion had some ideas about that. I'm not sure, to check with them. They have this C Pro Canon. Not sure if that became a reality though. But I got your point. Yeah, it's really. But one thing I didn't get, when you said people using Preston a lot, and then you want to have iris extension, so you control iris from the Arri and focus for the Preston, or how?
Yeah, so basically we would tap into the internal Arri wireless to be able to just get single channel control of the iris only, and the camera assistants can stay happy and use whatever systems that they want, but we have a more sophisticated ultra long range possibility just for iris alone, without having to mess up how the camera systems want to work.
Yeah. Okay, so for this, maybe, that would of course now introduce another box on the camera, but that would, I think for that you could really have a look at the ERM, because
right. So the idea would be not to introduce another box, which is why I mentioned the repeater. Just so, I think depending on how much delay for iris, unless we're doing very, very sensitive polls, it might be acceptable. If it's, the way we do iris polls isn't as critically timed as focus.
Tom, I'll check it out. Maybe we have a solution around the corner faster than we think, but I have to check it out, or we have to check it out.
Oh,
good point. Thank you.
Cool. Dave Satin had a question or a comment. Dave?
Hi, I'm right here. I hope.
Dave, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
There we go.
How about now?
Yep.
So, I in terms of the topology of antenna connections, as long as you use something that is easily readily available and is industry standard, like an SMA or an RPSMA, we can always handle our own antennas. And then a comment about Tom's comment. Whatever, if you want to have that kind of control of the camera, it can't be, in my opinion, it needs to be something that's internal to the camera. It can't be a separate box because they'll just tear it off and half. They being our friends, the ACs. And the steady cam guy, and the DPF being the B camera, and everybody
Hey
else.
Dave, your mic is terrible. We can't hear you, bud.
You gotta talk to your sound mixer.
Yeah, your mic is, we can't hear you.
Sound
All right,
guys
let me
are
figure that out.
terrible.
Yeah, much better, Dave.
Is that better?
Yeah, give it another shot.
The antenna connection should be any kind of industry standard connector, like an SMA or an RPSMA, and any kind of control for iris is a great idea, but in my opinion, if it isn't built into the camera so that it can't be removed by our friends the ACs, we just won't have access to it when the camera goes on Steadicam, or when the DP's operating it, or it's handheld all day, or any one of the 1,000 reasons why we've all heard you can't even ride a rocket box. So it needs to be built in, and it has to be bolted on. It's it's going to be the same problem we have now with everything, right?
Yeah, actually, the AMA 400 is built in. So you mean that you wish to have like an ERM long range extender version built in the camera? Got it? Yes.
Yes. Or a way to set up a mesh network easily, or a way to have long range control, because we can't ever be close enough to the set.
Yeah, I agree with the SMA on the handset. So lesson learned. Yeah.
Okay. What else would you guys like to ask, Henrik?
I'm wishless happy.
Okay.
There has been a question raised from, I think, Willis, about an issue that camera assistants are having quite a lot. I think Michael Jonas can talk about it. It's about the SDI/power problems that happen on sets nowadays. Maybe Michael, you can give us a short overview and an explanation why we should plug in which cable first on cameras.
Okay, Willis again. Okay, so the point is there is connectors that are good and there's connectors that are bad. Ideally, kind of a power connection would like connect ground first and then like minus and plus, and ground being minus in most of the cases. So what happens in practice is that there are connectors like D-tabs, or like you guys call it P-tab, and or like 2-pin connectors of any sort. And if it happens that the minus pin connects first without the plus pin having a connection, on monitors especially, that monitor, when SDI happens to be connected before you attach power to the monitor, actually chooses the SDI connection to be the plus connection, right? So minus connects, plus doesn't connect. You get a loop through SDI, and then when the monitor powers up, actually there is an inrush current, like multiple amps going into the monitor, and they come on the minus pin into the monitor, and kind of course, because it's like current, so it needs to go somewhere back. It chooses to use SDI for like the backlink through the SDI connection, and that essentially fries high frequency SDI connections, like everything that's 6G or 12G. And to our knowledge, actually that issue can't be fixed, right? So you cannot actually prep the SDI connection to avoid that. So in many cases, this is going to fry the camera, or it's going to fry a transvideo, or it's going to fry. I have talked to a lot of Blackmagic users who actually had the same issue with kind of their eyepiece, and kind of it fries the camera when you connect the eyepiece. These kinds
you
of
have to go
funny
to fries and break
issues.
their parts.
Yes, and then you have to go to Arri actually next to fries and actually get your camera to service, right, in Burbank. That's pretty much the issue. So kind of the recommended practice is actually connect power first and then SDI second. And if you disconnect SDI first and then you disconnect power. And if you're really, really kind of into it, then kind of you connect power first and then you turn the monitor on in order to ensure that actually both leads of your power lines are connected, because kind of what happens if the plus line is broken somewhere in your power cable and you then connect SDI, then it's going to fry your camera as well. So it's a very kind of like unintuitive thing, and it's kind of technically is a big problem, because I believe there's nothing we can do in order to avoid it, just because the SDI connection these days, like 6G and 12G, are so high frequency that any protective like circuitry around the SDI would totally kind of like mess with the signal and like either make 6G or 12G unusable, or like essentially limit the cable length you can use on these connectors very much. So power first, SDI second. If you remove it, remove SDI and then power, and then you're safe. That will actually save a whole lot of service bills, and kind of it will kind of ensure that like the camera is always working. It's one of the more important things to actually keep in mind. You wouldn't believe how many people actually have contacted me with all kinds of different cameras. Like this is also an issue on Sony's and Canons and Blackmagics and wherever, because essentially these high frequency SDI ports cannot be protected against these issues. So,
Michael, this is not just the Arri thing. This is like all manufacturers that's using 6G, 12G.
Yes, it is kind of, it's an essential kind of, it's a built-in issue, right? Kind of if you have SDI connected between the monitor and the camera, or like it doesn't only apply to the monitor, it can also apply to transvideo, but like very often right now, like we have solved these issues for 1.5G and 3G connections, right? So if your connection is only 3G, you can protect against that because the frequency is not so high that the impedance is actually affected that much. But like on 6G and 12G, essentially, we haven't figured out a way to do it, and I don't think anyone has. So because you need some kind of capacitors in between, and you have to actually introduce kind of capacity for the protection of the SDI port, and actually that capacity actually messes with the signal, so your signal gets rounder, and then like your cable length actually is being reduced, and or like the port doesn't work at all anymore. So there is no effective protection against this. And if you, and like there is ground, you actually, SDI has ground and signal. And if you only connect like the minus pin to your monitor and you have ground on the other side, right? What happens is that you create kind of a conductive loop, because like DC cameras do not, or like what happens if plus connects first, right? So DC cameras do not always have a clear ground that's separated from plus and minus of the DC electronics in the camera. So pretty much every camera will break. And like I know from a lot of Blackmagic users, kind of I know like 15 who have actually contacted me on Instagram, actually trying to get confirmation that this is the problem, why they fried, for example, the camera with their viewfinder. Like we had lots of issues with the Mini, but like over time we found like a circuitry that kind of worked. But now with the MiniLF, for example, kind of we have this 12G connection there, like all 12G transceivers there, and we see the numbers actually go up again a lot. So kind of this is pretty much our #1 service issue for the MiniLF, is a broken SDI port. And I have talked to the Red guys, and they said they would get back to me, but they never did. Which I take as a clear indication that they are having the same issue. And kind of, I think Sony I talked to as well, and kind of they would have gotten back to me and say, listen, we don't see that issue, but they never did. I asked them to actually have a common industry kind of communication, kind of telling the field that this is really a big problem. But like, okay, this was kind of very short time before kind of the virus hit, so maybe they have the same issues as us, kind of not working so much. And by the way, I'm here in my spare time, so I'm not working right now because I'm not allowed to work. Kind of, this is me privately talking to you. I'm in my sweatpants, wearing no shoes, so it's definitely private.
Hey, Michael, is this an on-camera issue, or is it something that we will see like on a receiver end as well?
Well, it is everywhere, right? Kind of, you can have it on the receiver as well. Kind of, if you kind of, if for example you have a Teradek receiver, right? And it's one of the new ones that actually does 4K. I am pretty sure that if you actually connect that like SDI to some kind of monitor, and that monitor is on and connected to power, and then you connect that receiver with power to the same source as the monitor, right? Like same ground, you can kill that receiver as well, easily. That's kind of a universal problem when there is an SDI connection. And when the other device on the other end of the SDI connection somehow has same ground as your as the power source for your kind of device that you're trying to power, you can kill all sorts of stuff using that. And the only safe way of doing it is actually connect power first. In theory, there is a safe way to do it if you have shielded connectors, because the shielded or like shielded cables, because kind of on shielded cables, actually the shield will make sure that the ground connects first, right? So minus equals ground actually will by design connect before any of the pins hit first, right? If the plus pin hits first, then you're screwed. And with PTAB, actually that's quite easy, because kind of the connector is plastic, it only has 2 pins, and it's more like roulette, right? Whether actually plus or minus actually gets connection first. And I said it the wrong way before, if the plus pin actually connects first, then you're kind of fucked, if you have SDI connected.
Awesome.
So Michael, thank you very much for this. I think you want to talk a little bit about metadata. Is that right? Can we steer in that direction?
Okay. Yes, we can actually talk about metadata. The question is kind of, we have like I'm pretty much heading up a group at Arri that is actually currently looking into collecting metadata on set, and I just wanted to get your feedback on like how is this affecting you guys? Kind of how are you dealing with that? Who is actually organizing that? How do you see the situation right now?
I could speak to that for a quick second, and then we'll take a question. There's no industry standard way. There's no great way to go about it, and everything's so piecemeal. And a lot of recording metadata or pulling metadata is so unique, you know, to how people work that it's one of those things that isn't. It's super important, but it's not as ubiquitous as it should be because there's no like protocol for how to acquire it. So I think if we see more like a bigger push from you guys to like standardize it and make it more important, I think we would absolutely love to be the people that are in charge of it.
Well, actually, in order to answer that, kind of there's a special group that kind of I head up in Arri, and we're kind of currently looking at the situation. Looking at networks on set, and it's quite kind of interesting to see kind of like the way you're talking about Wi-Fi mesh networks, but we are also looking at 5G at the moment, like, and try to figure out how actually 5G could be applied to a film set. Because we believe that kind of a working network, a working IP network is the basis of like a good metadata workflow. Otherwise, everything is kind of proprietary and kind of like in specific packaging. And we have lots of people who ask us to include as much as possible in our clips, because once it's in the clips, kind of there's some standard way of transmitting it and like using it. That's something we are currently looking into, right? But like our conclusion was that kind of mostly the IP or like the metadata, let's say, standards will come from the studios pretty much. Kind of, I kind of more see like people like Disney, Netflix, Amazon, like the larger ones, to actually define what they would like to have, instead of us actually pushing a standard, right? So we believe it needs to be open to a certain amount, but like what's needed, I'm not sure whether we can actually understand it entirely, because there's so much use during the production workflow that and we're like, this is why we have that group, because we're talking to people and trying to figure out what is a reasonable actually thing to do there.
Chris Bolton has a response to that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, when it comes to metadata, I mean, as we do right now, most of us are acquiring our metadata through SDI ancillary protocols, which it works about 60% of the time. But of course, as soon as someone plugs in some device that doesn't support this, of course that goes away. I mean, the real aspect though is all that metadata we really need from the camera is pulled once you offload the footage. We're still grappling on exactly how to share that between computer to computer. But the ability to be able to add in information live to a camera for example, like a script supervisor needs to enter in some notes about a particular scene, have it live integrate into the camera metadata, or if we're entering information about filters, or if we're using non-LDS lenses, entering information about non-LDS lenses, if you're not using an encoder system that can track all that. It's about any information that we're sort of enter in as an external from camera aspect are things that are still a bit of a challenge. And I do like the idea of being able to manage that through some infrastructure other than through SDI. One thing that we'd be doing on the last project I worked on was using, and it is kind of proprietary, but using ACN to communicate some of that information.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else want to speak to this? Mike Sipple, do you mind talking about it? And just so you guys know, if you guys don't ask these questions on the video, they're not recorded in the video. So if you ask them in the chat, it's lost once the video is saved. So please ask these questions.
Sure. Hey, guys.
Thank you.
I think I have heard, of course, somewhat internally about what you guys are doing with this metadata initiative. It seems to me, in talking to various people, and what's going on with the HPA, what I saw when I was out there in February, what we really need is sort of a standard interface and API or protocol, if you want to call it that, to be able to inject metadata from a variety of different external sources into a camera, and then have the camera wrap it up inside of the container for the image essence as metadata that then travels along with the file. The final piece of that equation is then to have some kind of transcoding system that will, and a mezzanine codec that will preserve the metadata as it gets transcoded and distributed throughout post. But sort of start the whole thing, you first have to get that external metadata in there. It's tricky, though, I understand, insofar as that metadata could come from a lot of different places. It could actually be a lot of different things. I think any system that would be devised would have to have sort of a built-in way for both bringing in the metadata, but then also describing what the metadata is. You'd have to make it sort of open and general so that, to avoid having to nail it down too tightly to make it extensible for a variety of different purposes. Just create sort of a general purpose language that people could use, but then as part of that protocol, also force them to specify, hey, this is what this field describes, and here's how you parse it.
I get part of the reason, this is part of the reason why we switched to MXF as a container, because it's a lot more flexible and kind of there's a lot more we can do with it. And like my past, kind of before I worked at Arri, kind of I built that system at Avid that's called Interplay. And there is, we talked a lot about like kind of dark metadata, kind of which is metadata that like you ingest into a file, but the camera doesn't need to understand it. So it's just pretty much like an envelope that you actually push into the file, and some way downstream the workflow, somebody has to actually be able to find it, locate it, and kind of get it out again. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Hey, Michael, one thing I guess I want to say that I've been saying for almost 10 years now is that bad metadata is worse than no metadata. And so whatever you're developing, it's got to be insanely simple for all departments to use, whether it's a script supervisor or visual effects or DIT, and if something is wrong or someone puts in a wrong note, like there should be maybe per project, like 2 people that steward the process or the database that's being built. So if there are mistakes entered into it, they can be fixed and updated, by people that are managing the project database. Because again, if you guys are, if visual effects is building data off of thinking that we're using a 50mm lens and it was really a 25, or it just, people start to really distrust the data if it's wrong faster than they want to use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's for sure. Kind of like, I think that extensible system is more like about positional metadata and kind of some specialized systems that actually do kind of all kinds of production nodes and everything around. So kind of all we kind of will offer in the camera for that kind of metadata is we actually act as if we were a post office, right? So like you send us some information and you give us a tag, what kind of information that is, and we will make sure actually it ends up in the MXF in some way downstream, kind of when the MXF is processed and actually being managed. You can use that same tag and get the information back and actually read whatever has been actually pushed to the camera. And the workflow pretty much and the MXF file only acts as if it as like a courier, right? Kind of you have it, you post something and you take it, understands what the message is, because it's kind of in kind of an envelope, and all we do is actually make sure that when you send it, somebody else can receive it downstream and actually do whatever they actually need to do with it. And the information stays untouched pretty much. And that's more like for the stuff that actually is not directly related to the camera, kind of course, lenses and focus and like all the things that are intrinsic to kind of the work of the camera itself actually needs to have some more transparent and kind of more standardized actually workflow. And we're kind of looking into that as well.
Yeah, I think the obvious thing would be to make an app or some kind of thing for the second ACs who are actually taking down all the camera notes in like a logbook. You know, I know they already have these such apps, but it should be more official coming from Arri. But then I mean, basically like sound, script supervisor, DIT, second AC, like there's all different departments generating really useful information. But if Arri can make the standard, I guess, hub that people talk to and it doesn't inconvenience them, it will be really easy to start getting metadata in, you know, and it'd be great to see where that can go.
Yeah.
Chris Bolton has a question.
Yeah, it's sort of 2 points. One is when it comes to sort of managing metadata from sound, script supervisor, and sort of different departments. I mean, part of that standardization is figuring out how to funnel all of that into a system. I mean, someone mentioned using SilverStack, for example, sort of manage all that information to bring it into one spot, but then have that be easily transported to post. So it doesn't necessarily have to happen live on the camera. It needs to be something that can be user updated as you shoot, or even if after you've offloaded the footage as well. On the note also with metadata, I mean, more and more projects are utilizing visual effects, data wranglers, which are always trying to acquire as much information as they can get from a camera. So they're always liking to see all the, you know, overlay metadata on the SDI, but you know, they quite often want the ability to be able to just have a screen where they can just see metadata coming off the camera. That would definitely be helpful for them. And to note to that, just as an example, if you're working with Weta Digital, they want all your cameras synchronized. So I know with sort of the Alexa Mini LF, you can gen lock the cameras, but that's becoming more and more of a thing, not so much to do with image synchronization for, you know, for 3D or other purposes like that, but to do with synchronization to witness cameras. So, you know, being able to implement perhaps in the future some way to synchronize cameras, perhaps using Ambient's ACN type network would definitely be of value as well, as not just acquiring metadata, but synchronizing the metadata is also important, not just to do with frame rate, but also to do with actual line level synchronization.
Okay, so like synchronization via kind of the ambient tools actually works already, right? So you can actually gang your sensor to the timecode source, and then like the timecode source essentially actually takes over the role as a master clock, right?
Yes, you just add a box and you can do that.
Yes. So and that's possible right now. The other way to synchronize cameras right now is X-Sync, for example. So you can actually sync up to 16 cameras, and they will also share kind of control, and you can actually control them as if they were one camera right now. So you can stop them as an array, and you can and all the metadata is going to be shared as well. You need these X-Sync boxes, actually EDBs, for that. That's very often used for VFX grids, or kind of like if you shoot light maps, stuff like that, right? So
yeah, I've used that before, but to be quite frank, unless it's a way that's wirelessly communicating this information, it's fine for arrays and things like that.
Yes.
But A, B, C cameras aren't always right next to each other, and it's not always feasible to run, you know, heavy data cables.
Well, and then we are kind of and then we're back to actually mesh networking cameras in a reliable way that allows actually camera synchronization. And so far, actually there is no technology that actually provides that, to my knowledge, in a reliable way, right? So we have hopes we can actually get it done using 5G, because like there's like the biggest hope, I think, in that part, or like in that let's say use case in the future, is a protocol like an IP protocol called PTP, that actually allows you to synchronize kind of clocks wherever in your network. Right now, actually, that's a very specialized network technology, and it kind of requires some kind of data center type switch from Cisco, for example, kind of that supports PTP in order for it to work. But there are efforts to actually make it work through kind of like 5G right now, and there is like efforts to actually get it more broadly used. And if we actually can pull this off, then a whole new world actually starts to show up, because then all of a sudden you can actually synchronize lights and cranes and motion controls and cameras and whatnot, and have them all use the same time base, and then all of a sudden you can like record metadata, and you don't have to fear like let's say delays or any network communication, because you can timestamp everything that you're recording, right? And everything that you're recording will have actually the same time base. Once actually that stuff happens, actually it's going to be a completely new world. But right now, actually through Wi-Fi, that's not possible, because the latencies are too high, and you cannot actually get PTP clocks synchronized through Wi-Fi reliably. So that's a little bit of a future, but like once it happens, it's going to be the new world pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's nice things to look forward to. I mean, I suppose all I'm saying for now is you can use an external box and do at least pretty accurate sensor synchronization,
Yes.
ACN, on, you know, not all ARRI cameras, but on the platforms that work with that. And then the other thing for sort of future looking to, I know SMPTE's been working on a new timecode standard. It'd be very nice to have a way to synchronize in alternate frame rates other than sync sound.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, that's we're looking. It's a little tricky right now. Kind of when we are looking at stuff, we are kind of, there's like two concepts, right? Kind of one is PTP, and that's going to be straightforward because you have a timestamp and it's going to be universal, and it will work in any type of like frame rate, because the precision is so high that you don't care, right? The other thing that we are kind of currently looking at is kind of using time code plus an offset, like you can imagine kind of a regular 24 FPS time code and kind of a microsecond offset to that 24 FPS frame, in order to actually log something that actually has subframe precision, right? For like audio samples kind of and whatnot. Like if you read encoder values from kind of a crane or kind of a head or something like that. The tricky bit, like that's kind of a cool thing to do when you're doing live comps and stuff like that, but it's kind of a tricky bit to have a lot of people kind of agree to the same standard, because essentially it doesn't exist right now. Everybody is kind of using timecode at the moment, and and you need adoption through a larger group of people who actually agree that this is the way to do it. And the trickiness right now is that nobody actually knows how quickly PTP is going to be adopted, right? So if there is a way to build a stable 5G network like next year, then all that timecode plus offset development is going to go down the drains. And PTP is going to be likely is which scenario, and we're kind of trying to weigh the things coming up. So it's predictions are kind of really tricky, especially when they're about the futures, right? So
yeah, it's kind of worms. I mean, having that
yeah.
subframe timecode option, even just for off speed for now, would be quite nice.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, I want to start a petition that we can get rid of integer frame rates like 2398 bullshit and something like that.
MPSF.
Can we just, all agree on 24 frames, please, for the future, so we can take it out of future cameras?
I think
you're kidding, right?
Philip,
You're kidding, right?
I would love to remove interlaced, right?
Yeah.
But I still can't do it. I still actually cannot kind of just scrap it. It's
Or
still
legal
there.
versus extended and shit like that. Let's get rid of it.
Okay, so the
2020.
order, right? The order you're talking about is the 1370.
Yeah, Michael, whatever you guys make developments on that metadata thing, keep us up to date. I'm sure all of us would love to be well versed in making sure that it's successful.
Yes, like just in order to give you kind of a short summary of what we're doing kind of at the moment, and kind of all the efforts have been a little bit screwed by the virus, because I don't know if anybody kind of mentioned that, but we are on short time work in Arri right now, so kind of we do only work part-time because of the situation. So I honestly actually just work kind of pretty much a day a week, and the rest of the time I'm not allowed to work because the government is supporting us. This is also why I'm here private and not working. And that kind of killed kind of our schedules a little bit, but there is an effort going on, and in the effort right now, what we're trying to actually do right now is figure out what network options are there and what capabilities actually will they provide us. Because we figured there's a lot of different solutions out there already that actually deal with metadata, from smaller companies and from larger companies. But the big shift is going to be when it's actually possible to really network an entire set so that everybody is happy with it. And so we are looking into 5G right now, and we're kind of looking into what options are they and what capabilities will it provide in order to actually come up with a plan for that.
Hey, quick question about that.
Yeah.
Since light panels and area lights are on almost every set, and there is a network that those connect to, couldn't we just piggyback on something like that?
See, the thing is, they it's all very let's say locked in. So kind of the network that kind of the lights are kind of using is a special type of network that's kind of purposely made. It's not IP, and it's kind of very dedicated. You could actually wire lights using, for example, Wi-Fi, but then kind of on most set it doesn't work. And if you look at the scale, kind of on a large production, right? Kind of, I've been at Star Wars in London, and if you're looking at kind of a set that has literally thousands of lights, then it doesn't work anymore. So we need to figure out a way how to establish an IP network, because that's kind of what we're talking about, right? So kind of the big thing, the big difference from, let's say, proprietary technology to kind of a network solution is actually if we are able to actually establish a working, reliable, trustable IP network, and kind of everything that we're doing is just going into IP user space, and kind of all the underlying kind of transport protocol and kind of hardware, whatever shit, is actually going away. And this is actually what we're trying to figure out here because that is where kind of the big switch is going to happen.
Understood. It'd be great if you guys make sure that like laptops can easily access this and cell phones can easily access this, so people
Yes.
can type in metadata, obviously.
Yes, sure.
Cool, great. Thank you very much for this. There's been a request from Chris Bolton to talk about media readers. Do you have any questions right there?
We should have invited Ollie, to be honest, and we kind of didn't.
We would be almost more people than participants. But maybe we can take notes for Ollie and relay them to him. But Chris, is there anything you wanna ask?
Basically, just like I mean, it's a can of worms, I guess, that you could open up. I'm just going to use the Alexa MiniLF as an example. I mean, you have this nice form factor, bus powered reader, and there's definitely a market for that. But the funny thing with the Thunderbolt 3 interface is, depending on what computer you plug it into, it doesn't always manage enough power to a specific device. So when you create card readers, please always, 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 always include an option to externally power it.
Yes.
Always have that option, please.
The problem is actually that we are not creating the card readers, that some other company is actually creating them. And we always have lively discussions actually that like are close to yes, yeah. It's like, it's always kind of it's like a lot of the situations, it's not always as easy as it would seem, right? And we kind of have a lot of back and forth where we said, well, actually, yeah, at external power, it's so easy, right? And then it's not, and we have to agree that it's not, and it's some things that you have to swallow working with engineering sometimes. So we look into it.
Yeah, it's just all your past readers have this ability, and it's kind of like, I mean, I definitely understand the reason for a bus powered system. And there, like I said, there is definitely markets where it's like, I just want to be able to read the card on my laptop or whatever. And for most people, you know, even if it's slower data rate, because they're in a region where they can't necessarily plug it in, it makes sense. But for the other 80% of production that is acquiring huge amounts of data, we need card readers that can obviously deal with the advantage of the offload speeds of that media. And unless you can power the reader, you're going to come into problems with that Thunderbolt interface.
There is, I think it has been announced by Codex already. There's a mini mag reader coming out, Thunderbolt 3 powered at some point, which will utilize the full speed. I'm not aware of when this is going to happen, but it's somewhere coming up.
You can get that right as an example. That's all I'm saying. Is it's an example for, you know, going forward. It's just I'm not too sure where that confusion happened, and it's frustrating when you're dealing with such an advanced camera, and it's difficult to be able to even get the footage off. That's my sort of point.
Well, difficult. I mean, of course, those readers could be faster than they are, but I think we all get a pretty decent speed of them compared to what was there before. And I think, you know, there's many users worldwide where offload speed isn't such of a concern like it is within our group of professionals, because people just offload directly to a single, I don't know, lazy orange drive, and they wouldn't even know what speed to get off the card. And trust me, I deal with regions where this is the preferred way of offloading data. So there's always, like, you know, I mean, yeah, the reader could be faster. There's something coming up. So far, that's the only solution we have, unfortunately. But there's something coming up.
Chris, have you used the compact drives inside a SXR reader with the drive adapter? Because that does get you the full Thunderbolt 3 speed. I recognize that, you know, that most people that are buying the camera aren't getting that reader with it, but I know certainly at rental, we've made an effort to try to bulk up on those readers specifically for that reason. And we'll presumably start replacing some of them with the compact drive dedicated readers once those hit the market. But, you know, there is a solution out there, I guess is my point.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm aware of it. And I have used it. It is difficult to get that adapter. And I guess there was some issue where the adapter could be installed upside down and people were, yeah. I'm aware. I'm just saying, you know, as a general roadmap, other companies like Sonnet came out with card readers that were bus powered as well, and it's just a bad idea. I mean, I can understand the reason for it, but to be able to have an alternative way to power that card reader is so important.
See, the tricky bit kind of, and I can chime in here a little bit, is we talked about the SDI issue, right? Kind of how actually having SDI connection kill your kind of SDI port on the camera if you kind of connect power first. Like essentially that same issue, right? You will have on that reader as well, right?
Yeah, and that happens with hard drives and other devices as well. I mean, devices should always be plugged in first before the data cables are plugged in and booted up. I mean, it's definitely a concern. I mean, at least on the computer side, unless it's a really bad jolt, the computer actually has a way to turn off that input. You have to reboot to recover it, but it does have some levels of protection in there.
Yes, but like if you kind of talking about the USB-C reader, right? If we would like have an external power, right? In order to power it like from another source, then you would have to care about what you plug in first, right? It's actually not so easy, and that basically I think also the reason why they didn't do it in the first place, because it kind of complicates the situation quite a bit, and there is actually a potential for havoc.
That could be remedied real easily with a printed label on the card reader. This isn't
Yes,
rocket
but like
science.
that, see, kind of, you put like a printed cable on the card reader. It's not about where you plug stuff in. It's about when you plug it in, right? Because you could have like the power plugs that you use for these little card readers. Kind of, they are tricky, right? Like they are not guaranteed, and you would actually be in a very similar situation, I guess. And I think that's part of the design decision to use kind of the USB-C power or the USB power on that one for now. Everything else actually would be quite complicated, I think.
Okay. Ben Hopkins has a question. Ben, we'll go to you.
Hey guys. Howdy. No, it's just in regards to that reader. I've been through the whole gamut of issues with the USB-C CODEX compact reader, but also the pleasure of having the adapter using the compact CODEX compact card adapter with a SXR reader as well, with Thunderbolt 2 and Thunderbolt 3, and they both hate. The interesting thing to me that I found back in February, I went to CODEX website. I know you guys aren't CODEX, but you probably have a better in with them than I do. They had a new product, just a picture of it and the name of it, and it was a dedicated compact CODEX compact card Thunderbolt 3 reader with no adapter. And I called the guy, I called them about it, and they didn't even know that it had been posted on their site. So I don't know if that was accidentally put up too soon or what. But at the same time that product went up, the product of the adapter itself was gone. And so the implication to me was that they're not selling that anymore. And I know some rental houses just don't have enough of them. Like Panavision, Woodland Hills, for instance, they're like, no, we've got the readers, but we don't have any of those adapters. So it makes a huge difference in terms of what you're able to do workflow wise, you know, because of the data rates of the MiniLF. So that's, you know, is that something that you can speak to at all? Maybe you can't, but on the horizon, when would that product actually be available? Because I do see it as like a full bandwidth solution it's not bus powered. It's got its own power. It's its own dock, and that's cool.
Mm.
What I can tell you from a sales side of point of view, I think those CODEX those adapters are available now. So if people had issues ordering them, they can order them already. In terms of the delivery for this other standalone reader, I have no info.
Yeah, it's a bummer we don't have Ollie on the call.
Should I ask him?
So which one do you not have any info on, Philip?
The standalone reader.
The Thunderbolt 3
yes.
direct compact.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the same post that Ben was talking about. It was up and then it disappeared.
Oh really? I haven't gone back since like the February timeframe or something and checked.
Yeah,
it
this
out,
was a while ago. This was a while ago.
Okay.
I think it was just a mistake.
Just random generated this image of something that kind of looked like a. Well, I'm hopeful that it's a real product.
Should be.
Michael, do you have Ollie's private number?
Yes, I do. I kind of like text him this afternoon whether he wants to join us tonight.
Yeah.
But actually the message didn't get through, so I think he's just offline.
Hey, Phil, do we want to talk to Florian about the Training Academy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we can keep these questions open, and I might post a follow up on this group if Ollie has something to say about the readers or the reader that's about to come.
Hey, Jamie, could I add one more comment? Hey, Chris, about putting them in backwards or upside down. My experience with that is when I first got it, it's the adapter and the compact codex card. There seems to be a logical way, from my standpoint at least, of how it would all go together. I'm in the moment, I'm on the job, and I was like, oh, this isn't mating. And then I realized, okay, well, it does need to be flipped the other way. So it's something to be, understood, but really, I don't think any loader or any DIT should be actually forcing anything. And if somebody breaks it, I think that would take a lot of force to try and, mess the pins up because it's upside down. There are arrows that actually line up and show you. And maybe a nice little P-touch thing on the front would help new loaders with it. But once you got it, it works very, very well. If you can get the adapter.
I don't think anybody in our group did that. That's all I'm saying.
Chris, I think you definitely opened a can of worms, and the topic P-touch on media would be another can of worm. Since the housing of Codex media is meant to be cooling element, so you should not stick any stuff on the wrong side and so on. But again, we are really happy to give you all the information that we have, but our hands are tied at some point when we have to involve another company that actually makes it happen. And feel free to ask any questions. We will pass it along to we have our own recording media product manager, which is Oliver. I think he's also invited to the Facebook group. So we're really there for you and try to optimize what we can.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not angry. I'm just saying going forward, that's a feature request I'd like to see on all media readers. That's all. Thank you.
Hey, let's take a quick question from Adam Braverman, and then we'll go to the Training Academy stuff from Florian.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think it was a question to Ben. Were you talking about the CODEX compact drive dock? Is that what you were seeing? It's a power dock for the compact cards?
Yeah, it had the same square format with its own slot that was only for the Codex compact cards, powered with a traditional power supply, probably with a 2-pin you know, locking connector and Thunderbolt 3.
It's 12 volt as opposed to 24 volt and 2 amps as opposed to 3 amps. I was talking to the guys at Panavision in Vancouver. They didn't have it, but they were talking to Codex in England like the day I was there at prep and said there would be like a 3-month lead time. Now, given what's gone on, I don't know, because this was back in February. So they were probably trying to have it ready to show off at NAV.
Right.
So it does exist, but I haven't seen it. And yeah, I guess maybe marketing got a little too itchy trigger finger. That being said, I think that the read speed of the mag will actually be faster in a mini to full size adapter, which a lot of us have used in the full size card. I don't know, Bolton, you want to speak to that? Because I think you've done some tests. Chris,
well,
anything to add
you know,
there?
one thing, did they say that it's only getting 2 amps? Because it could be getting the rest of the power over the Thunderbolt.
Well, it's a powered dock to solve those issues of people who are maybe on Thunderbolt 2 machines or on an older Mac Pro who need the speed but can't give bus power or something. So they're trying to get around the bus powered, and we all know that even at the full 3 amps power watt delivery of a Thunderbolt 3 host from like a MacBook Pro computer, that it will you're not going to get more than what was it, like 800 megs a second or something, or 1 gigabyte a second. And I was able to get more than that using the drive adapter and using the full size dock, which worked out for mine. My workflow was it was 2 minis and 1 LF. So from a logistics standpoint, I didn't want to have to crowd my cart with so many readers. So I just had like 1 reader, and I would put the adapter in when I got the mini LF cards, and then put the adapter away when I was getting LF mags. And the speeds were comparable. They're almost matched. But that has to
Can
do
I
with
add something? Maybe
ARI.
a few facts to that compact drive dock you're talking about, and I'm not the product manager, but I'm happy to share what I know. In February, I got the first working device on my desk, and it was already working nicely. What I learned from Codex is that since compared to the bus-powered reader, which is actually a USB 3.1 and not a Thunderbolt reader, this has to go through the Thunderbolt certification process, which is a painful, slow process for any Thunderbolt device. And that started in February. So I'm pretty sure that this should be kind of come to an end, and that's why NAB was the planned time frame to get this thing out of the door. It's on the website. There's numbers, and I'm pretty sure we could maybe find more details on the shipment during the next couple of days for you guys. So the good thing is, and this is a rumor, so please be a bit careful, is this might also work on Hackintoshes compared to the previous ones, and Windows. And that is also the reason why this one does not come with loop-through for some reasons I didn't understand. The Thunderbolt 3 port on this device is a single connector, as far as I know. Again, these are preliminary informations for the sake of Windows compatibility. And that's at least what I've been told. So there's pros and cons with the new boxes, and I know it's another can that we just opened up, but I think the specs are on the latest level. The read speed is as fast as the Mac can deliver data, and so far it's a reliable, and it comes with an external power supply dock.
It's big enough to hold 2 cards, yet it doesn't.
No, yeah, well, physically, no, actually it's smaller. So I just posted an image into the chat, so feel free, and with a little pen next to it. So it looks the same size than the regular capture drive dock, but it's a little bit smaller actually. But yes, there is a lot of housing compared to the physical size of the media, and that's also because of cooling issues.
Hey, Zach, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
No, Zach Martin.
Hey, Florian area team. I just had a feature request from a DP that I use a lot. We just got off a feature and we kept running into a small issue where we'd be in really tight spaces because we're shooting in tight houses and tight apartments and stuff. And he'd have to operate dump side a lot. And if we didn't have time to be able to rig the eyepiece to the other side and flip the image and do a bunch of like hocus pocus, he couldn't really operate dump side off the eyepiece like he'd like. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can just flip the image once the eyepiece gets also turned upside down. I forget which way it goes, but he basically have to operate off his left eye, which the only way to do that, or his right eye, on the left eye, is to flip the eyepiece upside down. So I basically just need an EVA, an eyepiece flip only, and not just the standard one that we have in the camera for like a steady cam.
I can answer it partly, and maybe Michael Jonas can help me out. As far as I know, there's an auto flip function in the viewfinders. So depending on the regular position, the way you flip it, it kind of flips automatically. But there is a menu that you can manually set the flip. Is that correct, Michael? Is
Well,
that
actually,
maybe?
what we don't do is actually flip the sensor when you flip the viewfinder. And I think what he's asking for is actually once you flip the viewfinder, the sensor get flipped with it. Right? Because the like image still needs to be upside down. If you turn the viewfinder on the other side, it is not. Or like it needs to be kind of upside up, and if you turn the viewfinder around, kind of all the menus will actually flip, but the image will actually still point the same way, I think.
Sounds like you need just a horizontal flip only for the EVF, yeah?
Does this make sense? It doesn't make sense, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I look into it, but like, I think I know where the issue is.
I mean, there's workarounds for it, Michael, but to just do it like really quick in a pinch, we were always like, we have to set it up, and he would just have to say, fuck it, hold it right side up, and then just operate up right eye.
No, I know what the issue is. Kind of the issue is the flip is only for the like fold out monitor, but you need it in the viewfinder as well, right? So that's
we
the
have
point.
that feature in our analog cameras.
What analog cameras?
We had this feature in our film cameras. So you can
That was before my time, and it was kind of a ground glass based whatever viewfinder, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're just gonna move on
Yes.
to Tom Wong had a question real quick.
Yeah, just to segue a little bit, thought it'd be worth mentioning now that technologies have increased in computing power so much. I just wanted to open up a conversation about the Alexa 65 and possibly maybe a conversation with CODEX to start getting downloads directly on a computer system again. It's, you know, generally before the processing power of towers was not equal to the Vault XL, thus limiting your download speeds and processing and so on. But now we have 28 core Mac Pros, which from my understanding is equivalent, if not faster, than the Vault XL now. And I know it's more of the CODEX side of things, whether what they're willing to do, what they want to do. But of course, coming from you guys, it might hold more weight than any of us.
I know that Arri Rental is actually heavily fighting for that, but like I think the problem is kind of the related engineering effort and like it's not a whole lot of cameras, to be honest, right? So kind of everything you do around it is extremely expensive, and I think they're kind of looking into it right now. But since I'm not with Arri Rental, and the 65 is an Arri Rental camera in the first place, I can't tell you what the current state of the discussion is, but like I know they are looking into that. They are well aware of it. Let's put it that way.
Oh, great.
We are looking into it, as Michael says. It's being actively explored and tested right now. I don't know at what point we will have any kind of formal announcement, but it is being worked on.
Yeah, that's super cool. Thanks.
Ryan Nguyen has a question.
Hey guys, quick one relating to the SDK with Resolve. I was doing some tests a couple of weeks ago, and what I noticed was after I had buffered an Arri raw shot, that it sat in my general computer system memory, and I actually had to restart my computer to flush it out. Whereas with another file, I was working with a red file, and every time we would access that frame, it would dig into it in the storage. So I couldn't find this literature written anywhere on the website. Maybe it is, but I don't know. Is that a thing that's actually happening? Are we buffering Arri raw into general system memory?
To be honest, if I chime in here, but I'm pretty sure it's similar with my colleagues here. This is a question that we would ask our friends at the workflow group at Arri, and it's a two-part process. One part is the SDK part, and the second part is its implementation in the third-party software. So we need to fine-tune the information which SDK is currently implemented in, you said Resolve version 16 something?
Right, 16.2.
So Michael, if you don't have any other information, I would suggest to drop us an email, and I'm going to give you the contact details right here in the chat.
Sure, that would be really useful. That way I can get a better understanding as to how this data is moving in front of us.
Yeah, Philip already replied in the chat, the email address where you just send that request, and we can.
Thank you, Philip. I'll do that.
It's anyway a good email address for all of you if you're interested in if you have workflow related questions. You can always email to digitalworkflow@arri.de, and the guys over there will take care of your questions.
Awesome. Chris Bolton has a question.
I'll just send it to the digital workflow thing, but just real quick, is Arri working on metal support for their SDK?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
No time frame though, but yes.
It's okay. Your stuff is fast to process. I was just curious. Thank you.
All right, let's hear from Florian. For everyone who doesn't know, Florian's like in charge of the training academy, and be great to hear from him what they have going on.
Well, thanks for giving me a short opportunity to explain what we're doing. A bunch of the DIT-WIT people already went to Munich. I think it was last year, or was it 2 years ago already? And it kind of was a joint forces team from I think mostly LA, coming to Munich for one of our color science classes. And I think this is probably the hot rod training that we are currently offering for you guys. And I know, in the probably closest or related question to that is, can we get this as an online training pretty soon? And I just have to admit, I have to say no to it for two reasons, or it will take at least some more time to get it done. One is that the team that we have in Arri to do the color science is pretty busy with making color science for the next couple of things to come, and we definitely or desperately need them for this level of education, at least to get the content prepared and maybe recorded or presented online. And we are forced to let them do their primary work at the moment. which is developing the final steps on things that are about to come. So we had to slow down our activities on the color science training, unfortunately. However, if there is an interest, and that helps us a lot to find people to make maybe decisions in speeding it up a little bit, there is we have on our Academy website pre-registration pages. That means you can just sign up for any training, and you can also pick locations that would be preferable to you. And then we got a list of interested people that we can show up to the boss and said, hey, we have a list of whatever, 20 people that want to go to that training or attend a training. Can we get the resources that we need? And maybe that helps a lot. So if you are a group of people that really want to dive a little deeper into the color science part, and you want to help us speeding it up, then would be the pre-registration part a helpful thing.
We really want to do another Munich class, but not in September. January or February would be nice, or maybe July.
Yeah. Again, that is something you can add to the pre-registration, which would be the perfect time frame for you guys. And we actually look at that, believe me. And just as you know, the academy at the moment in Germany is 2 people. And then we have an international team of a few helpers and other trainers. Just as an opportunity, we can host them technically anywhere, but I think the experience that you can get coming and visiting Munich is something different. Maybe the other folks already shared some insights of the previous training, because of course you get all the whistles and bells around it, and you're more than welcome to get a factory tour and take a look at sensor manufacturing, maybe at least the last time we got a chance. And since I'm within DIT-WIT since very early days, thanks to Jamie, you have the direct link to us. So just drop me a message, anything related to academy trainings. I'm more than happy to help you. Yeah.
Also, I just posted the link to the pre-registration where you can just register your interest in our courses. So please feel free and just, drop us messages and say, listen,
right,
I want this here in my town.
Thanks, Philip. And the other thing is just for the other people that are incredibly bored, and I know it's maybe, I know that you are very skilled in anything related to cameras. I just wanted to point out that there is a kind of Corona discount of 25% on the online trainings that we have available at the moment. This is a camera systems class and a large format camera system class. Those are like 8 sessions, like 90 minutes each, that can be watched just in case you're bored. And again, if you need any information about these online trainings as well, please get in touch with me. I'm here and available through Facebook, and we can also probably send our email addresses here in the chat of this.
You would not only get like a 25% discount on the courses, but you will also have access to all our Arri master classes, which we did over the course of the past years. And you can online them for free. You can watch them for free online as well.
Is there any chance to get a 25% discount extended to cameras as well?
That is a sales question, which we unfortunately have only Philip here that might get closer to give you an answer.
Philip already approved it, I heard.
Well, I can get you a free power cable.
Hey, wow. That's more than you'd expect.
Yeah, that's considered, if you calculate it down to the camera price, it's almost like a, it's a small percentage.
No, when it comes to training and education, if you don't mind, I have a quick question for you guys, because many people reach out to us and ask for a DIT course. and I'm a bit worried where to start and where to stop when we consider thinking of DIT courses, because we can't do, or we don't want to do, let's say, a resolve class. We can do dedicated informations, valuable for, I would say, becoming or involving loaders want to become a DIT. And what I'm really interested in is, what is your opinion from, let's say, your experience, that what you think one team member should bring onto a location where you're the DIT and he's the loader, or you want to have young DITs, kind of what's the minimum requirement they should know? And this could be something where we take a few elements out of the color science class, then we could add a lot of our workflow related items to it. So if there is anything that is if there's any input from your side, please come back to us. We also received some requests on training from American unions. So also I don't want to set up a program or a class that kind of interferes with your outline of duties over there. I want to respect your, different unions for different tasks. So, here in Europe, we are sometimes a bit more crazy when it comes what people calling themselves DIT is allowed to do. So very much appreciate if there's anything you think it's worth, and we could educate and train people becoming a DIT. Just let me know, and also give me feedback if you think this is worth of doing in general.
Yeah, of course. I think it'd be useful. I'll send you some notes, Florian. Does anyone have any questions for Florian or any feedback? Nathan, go ahead.
Sorry. I don't know if anybody else is interested, but I don't know if it's valuable as a DIT to have more tech, classes. Are there plans for a greater number of tech classes that are ever, camera service options ever available?
We do already offer certified training classes on usually dedicated cameras, and they are available also in your region, right? Is that not exactly what you're looking for? Do you need a different section of it?
I have seen them. I just hadn't seen them very frequently. Like I feel like they're like once every other year or something like that. Does that sound right? Well, that's more than that. It might be true in your region, to be honest, because I don't have it in mind how many trainings we did in the US in the past. But again, the one opportunity for you would be to pre-register just for the service training if you're interested, and your region and your time frame, so we get at least an understanding on how big is the interest. To explain a little bit more what is the topic on the service training, it's quite different to, let's say, a camera class that I do. The service is dedicated to techs that need to do at least, let's say, the first steps of working on the camera mechanically and electronically, and you need to be a certified, or you need to have a certified training before you can order spare parts. So even if you work as a tech in a rental and you want just to replace some connectors, there's a clear strategy what you can do and where you can buy the part. And if you attend such a training, there's different levels what you can do, and then you at least you don't have to ship the camera necessarily for the minor changes. Yeah,
So,
I'm sure most of the other guys in this group aren't necessarily interested in that, but I certainly am. But yeah.
Yeah, we also had a thought of doing a kind of medium service training. That means like, what is the minimum I can do on location to fix things? For example, run by a service tech. not by an operator, not by a creative person. So this is like a 1 day shorter session, not like a 2 day fully blown class, but what are the things that I'm allowed to do? What would be the best practice if things go wrong? How do I communicate and fix things? Stuff like that. So this is also something we are looking into. It. If this is something you're interested, yeah, let us know. It's like the onset service, if you want.
Yeah, field medic
Chris Bolton,
services.
you have the right approach to this.
Yeah, field medics. I like that term.
All right. So far, if there's any last questions, we're happy to answer them. Otherwise, we would slowly wrap this up.
I do have sort of a question. I don't know if it's on topic, but I have TPs sometimes that want to use their Arri to do time-lapse type functions. Any future plan roadmap for that?
Time lapse in general is implemented, so maybe you need to specify what. I mean, we do have an intervalometer built into a Mini and MiniLF, which you can have certain intervals. Of course, it's maybe not the 100% sophisticated time lapse, but it's quite powerful. Do you know about that?
I want to say yes, but no. I think more what I'm actually asking is frame rates under. There's sort of a thing with the frame rates under sort of 12 frames a second. You have to use a very specific shutter angle to be able to make sure you don't have any of the RPN issues. Is there any sort of future fix for that?
Maybe that's a Michael question. As far as I know, this is related to the exposure time that is kind of linked to the, let's say, lower frame rates. In a nutshell, there's different solutions. If you have a shorter exposure time, but let's say 1 frame every 5 seconds, that is perfectly fine. If you have an exposure time that is, again, let's say 1 second longer, then you run into the RPN issues as of now. I don't know any different solution. Maybe Michael can help me here.
I could, but I'm not allowed to. Yeah, well, the problem is actually the current sensor shows some artifacts when kind of the exposure times get unusually long, because then like weak pixel actually shows some strange behavior. In the future, we have a plan to do something about this, but this is as far as I can go. And I'm really sorry that I can't, like, I would love to talk all evening about stuff, and I would have like plenty of stuff to talk about.
Oh,
but
yes.
I can't, unfortunately. So yes and no and maybe, and we will see.
That's great. You're thinking about it. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Michelle Delorme has a question.
Hey, sorry, I forgot this in the feature request section of our session. It would be great to have a faster way to erase a white balance and add a new one, rather than realizing that the white balance registers are full and need to delete a white balance register and then add another one and then select it. It's just so many steps. It would be great if at camera there was a faster way to just say, I want to overwrite this white balance directly without having to go delete one, then come back in, add one, and then come back in and select it. And then additionally, it would be great to have folders in the LUT or the AML files so that you could say, like, I want to store my worm looks or my crazy looks or my trim offsets or whatever, so that there's a folder to kind of organize looks.
Yep. I haven't heard the one where kind of the white balance list is full. Kind of, that's an interesting point. Shouldn't be too hard. The other one I have heard before.
Hey, Michael, I have a question. Is it possible to change the default IP address on the cameras, or that we currently have, or at least on the cameras going forwards? You know how like the XT is like 169.254, I think it is. Like, is it possible to change that in the future?
Whoa.
What?
What are you talking about? Like the change all IP addresses. Like if you're if the camera is in host mode, I think you can set the IP address of the camera. And if the camera is in client mode, actually the IP, yes, yeah.
But on
and
like
the MiniLF.
But on like the XTs, you can't change it.
Well, I don't think there's gonna be that's like a whole different software base with a whole different process behind it. Like, see, it's like right now it's super tricky due to like that virus thing. I think really going forward, I think we have to actually balance our and pick our battles very precisely, because like some of us are like currently on a furlough, right? Like, or I only work 1 day a week, and others as well. And so we have to be clearly focused going forward, especially with the MiniLF and future cameras inside. And I don't think we will have time, quite frankly, to actually go back to the software of an XT and change network settings there. I don't think that's going to happen, really, realistically. Even if I would like to or love to, but like I really believe that's not going to happen.
All right. Anybody else with some final questions or feature requests or observations? If not, Phil, do you guys want to try and wrap this up?
Well, all I have left is to say thank you to all of you for listening to us, and thank you for all your feedback. I think this is really valuable for what we're going to do, and I'm sure some of you might have already seen some feature that you requested earlier implemented. So we're really thankful for all the feedback, and please continue nagging us. I'm super happy to give out email addresses of my colleagues and or forward requests to the Arri to the right person at Arri, so we can always discuss things. And one thing I cannot state often enough is whenever a camera crashes or you have an issue, please send your logs over to Arri.
Keep sending those logs, everybody.
Send those logs. We really need those whenever something happens or you have an issue.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right,
everybody.
Thank you very much. It was nice to talk to you all, and be safe.
Thank you, Arri team. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Yes, and we are on Facebook, right? So you can actually ping us anytime.
Sure.
Like if you, as soon as you write my name into one of your like comments or posts, right? I usually respond within a day. I try to. I can't always promise, but like I'm trying to. So like it's like a little genie in a bottle, right? You just have to call it, and then it shows up and answers questions. So
Same
here. Same here.
I'll forward all my cat memes to you.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.